that leads us into going to do the major time jump. We go from prequel to sequel. And this is the one that was teased again by Kurt Sutter as supposed to be the story of Abel and Thomas. I really like calling this show The Sons as opposed to Sam Crow. I think that you can make it a show literally about the sons and
Yes.
follow them on their journey. And it doesn't have to be Abel and Thomas only because Opie also had a son.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
I would love to see a series that is following those three boys from their perspectives and give them their own journeys, right? So
Yes.
Abel got the ring from Gemma, which completely poisoned Jax's plan of getting them away from Charming and not knowing anything about him or the club and hating him and all of that stuff. She killed that before he killed her. Abel has a ton of trauma,
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Abel has seen too much. I
so
think
much.
Thomas was so young, so yeah, there's much hope for him, I would say.
Yeah,
But I'm pretty sure Abel will be going in kinda the direction of Jax sometime, and maybe like the son of OP 2. But
yeah,
yeah, it could be like a really cool character-driven show because Thomas maybe goes in a completely different direction, like hating Jax or hating what he did, hating the club, hating maybe Abel too. And yeah, that could be a
that's
really cool dynamic behavior between those characters.
that's really interesting to me. I hadn't thought about Thomas like resenting or hating Abel. I had thought of Abel kind of having like like memories locked away that like his adolescent brain essentially like hid from him as
Mhm.
like a coping mechanism for the trauma that he had. And then kind of see those getting unlocked and seeing him trying to navigate like, oh my gosh, did I really see that? Did that really happen to me? That kind of stuff and kind of going on this like, who am I? What happened to me kind of a journey.
Yeah, that will
And then,
definitely be a part, yeah.
yeah,
Because even with his like kidnapping stuff, he can't really remember that, to be honest. But
no.
I think he will find out one day, and then he wants more answers.
Yeah,
And he will
exactly.
go back to Charming for that because I'm sure Wendy and Nero will like try to hide a lot from him so he can live a normal life. But back in Charming, there are all the answers.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think Opie's son, in my little, world, I think he's still there.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think he has an interesting possibility of still joining the club, but then having to also come to grips with the damage that it's done to his family,
Yeah.
literally caused his family, and have to deal with that duality of like, I'm a third generation legacy in this. I literally know no other life, but it's also destroyed my father's life and my life, killed my mother, killed my grandfather. Like it has been nothing but pain
Yeah.
causing for him in his life, but he could like know no other alternative and still wind up in it. Like I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting character arc to explore as well.
I completely agree.
And like you said with Thomas, I think he does go on a different path, but I always kind of I and maybe this is like cherry picking, but I always kind of pictured Wendy trying to like push Thomas towards medicine in some
Mhm.
way
Because
as
of
kind of
Terra, you
like a
mean
yeah, as kind of like her own little like
legacy or yeah.
yeah, and almost her own like homage to Tara.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like move him in that path, kind of in her memory or in her honor or whatever, to try to say like, he was gonna be like you, kind of thing. I think it's interesting as hell that you said maybe he hates Jax and hates Abel because I think there's something really interesting there. In my mind, he and Abel were like super duper close because of all this, but maybe they do have a split because Abel wants to go find answers and Thomas can't get further away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
That's
We
really
have to
interesting.
keep in mind it's like it is a show. It has to be like interesting.
Absolutely.
So we need characters that go in completely different directions. And if you have two brothers and you need different directions, that would be the easiest way to create like tension in the
Yeah.
show.
At some point, right, they have to come together. They at least have to come to the same place.
Yeah, that obviously true. Yeah.
Maybe I've given this some thought, but um, let's say Opie's boy is already in the club back in
Mhm.
Charming, dealing with his own, coming to grips on his own coming of age journey, if you will. Abel wants answers, so he goes back to Charming on his own.
Yeah.
Thomas does not. They have had their falling out or whatever it is, but then something happens to Abel.
And then Thomas goes, you mean?
Yep,
Mhm.
that's what brings Thomas to Charming, and then we can set forth on our journey of having our three sons that we follow
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
this biker world. Maybe Thomas, ironically, works at St. Thomas and kind of becomes the maybe he moonlights a little bit, filling bullet holes in Irishmen's buttocks,
Maybe.
and that sort of thing for the club. And then during the day he's in a normal white coat. I don't know, but
Almost like his mom.
yeah, right, exactly. But I feel like he has to be a completely different character than
Yeah.
Tara.
Yeah, that's of course.
Like I actually envision him being the most dangerous of the three.
Could be, maybe.
Like like imagine this. We've got like Opie's boy who is pretty much a mini version of Opie.
Mm.
You know what? I hadn't even thought of it this way. But what if Abel and Thomas are almost like the two sides that Jax could have
Yeah.
during Sons of Anarchy? He had like one side that was very like quick trigger, violent outburst. Um,
Completely mayhem side, yeah.
exactly, just absolute chaos. And he also had this like quiet, meticulous, like murderous side
Yeah.
that was fully capable of doing just straight up torture to somebody before he killed them. Maybe Abel is more the wear your emotions on your sleeve, violent outbursts, still trying to deal with his childhood trauma and just flies off the handle. And Thomas is just like constantly calculated, just
I
super
mean,
cold, but then we'll just take somebody out back and you never see that body again.
we already see like that chaotic, violent behavior on Abel in Sons of Anarchy, when I
Exactly.
remember right. Like he did some, yeah, like stuff in his school, when I remember right.
Yeah, he beat up a kid,
Yeah,
and he like self-harmed. Like it was actually really difficult season to watch. Um,
definitely.
Particularly when you've got this depicted by a 5-year-old. Like it's hard to even talk about what they showed that child doing on that show.
True, yeah. And he
And
has definitely like some psychological issues, I would say.
for sure, for sure. So now, that's had 20 years to fester.
Yeah.
There's no way this dude's a stable human being.
Definitely not. We don't know how all that what happened at the end of the show affected his mind. Yeah, we only saw what happened before, but with losing his father in that kind of way, I mean, he will know what happened. They can't hide it from him when he gets older. That will definitely make another big impact on his mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you've got a really cool show, right? Like you can take
Definitely.
it in so many directions. You can, I guess in my mind, I think it's really fun to have that dynamic of three sons that you're following. You've got the current member, maybe Abel decides to prospect, and Thomas comes, to and is running in parallel with them, but not a part of the club. I think it works with the current ending of Sons of Anarchy.
Mm.
And I think it also works if you needed to alter the ending for any reason, which we'll talk about in our next series that we're
Yeah.
going to discuss. But this is the part where I'm going to squeeze a quick little plug in. This is actually similar to a fan fiction that I started writing back in 2020 when I
Hmm.
found out that Sutter wasn't going to be a part of the network anymore, and I realized that the shows that we were promised probably weren't going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it was, early pandemic times. I needed a quiet creative outlet. This podcast didn't exist. And so I started writing. I got 11 chapters into a sequel fan fiction following Abel, Thomas, and Opie's son. So I started writing this. I've got 6 chapters that I have shared with patrons so far. I am reading them audiobook style for Bonus Binge Squad patrons and above. I'm not holding them back from anyone. There's not like a content release schedule or anything like that. As soon as I get the chapter read and edited, that goes up on Patreon. So if you would like to listen to me reading those, check out patreon.com/belatedbinge.
You should definitely check this out. Sounds really interesting to me.
It's very similar to what we just described, although the thing that you said about Thomas like hating Abel, that would make me want to rewrite some things because I really really like that. I like squeezing that in there.
Maybe you should have talked to me earlier, man.
I know, right? We'd had to have talked in 2019, honestly.
Yeah.
um,
But
okay.
I'm completely with you. That's definitely the show, maybe because it's a sequel, that has the biggest potential. Because we can do everything what we want. It can be in all directions. There's so much potential, and I hope that one day there will be the chance of something like this getting created.
I agree. It's the one that I wanted most, which is similar to what you said when you said you were looking for Sons of Anarchy content, back in 2018, 2019, and you couldn't find any, so you started making it. That's
Yeah.
literally the same thought concept that put me into just starting to write it. I was like, this is the show that I was most looking forward to as the next thing. At this time, Mayans had like just started,
Mm.
and I was less interested in Mayans. I was less interested in First Nine. It was this sequel that I was most interested in, and I was like, crap, it's not even going to happen. Well, I want to know
Yeah.
what happens, so I'm just going to start writing. and, and I got 11 chapters in, and maybe I'll pick it back up. But we'll see how it does on Patreon and see what people think and where we can take the story next.
Definitely something cool that you did. Because I think I'm pretty sure that you learned a lot writing those chapters.
It was really fun, to be honest with you, to try to weave in enough of the familiar backstory. When you're writing it, you're imagining somebody's reading it and may or may not have watched the original TV series, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the lens that I started writing it. So I wanted to at least have enough explanation and backstory and introduction of these characters as to like why they would care about their past and how it impacts them and how they got to where they are, but not just literally be doing a remember what happened in Sons of Anarchy and just like writing that out the whole
That
time.
would be not the best idea because then you have
Right.
not the potential for new viewers to enjoy the show.
Right. I just thought it would be fun for patrons to get to experience it and hopefully enjoy it. And if it goes well, then it can get some breathe some life into it. We can do some revising and finish out the story. But it was a fun needle to try to thread between laying that foundation for why it matters to these characters and then giving these characters their own story and their own thing.
I
It's
definitely think you should continue writing those episodes.
it's been fun. Like I said, I'm 11 in. I've read 6 for Patreon so far, and I'll keep churning them out. So that leads us into our third series that we were going to talk about today. And that is the most pie in the sky. It's the one that I think was the least planned by
Mm.
Sutter from the beginning. And this is the one where we have to have a ton of huge caveats from the beginning. And I think you and I agree in our interpretation and our I guess preferences. Jax Teller is dead.